Before we dive in today, did you know that there are over 50 full-length bonus episodes waiting for you on Patreon? Well, if you didn't, now you do. This month alone, I covered the Crestview family murders, which is a shocking Florida death penalty case that just ended earlier this year. Last month, I unpacked Alabama's Sarah Starr murder-for-hire case. And did you know that there was a chilling Offutt Air Force Base case where a wannabe serial killer detailed his plan to kill and then followed through with it? If you're craving more, head to patreon.com/militarymurder or tap the link in the show notes. All right, True Crime Army, let's get into today's episode.
This episode is brought to you by LifeLock. Between two-factor authentication, strong passwords, and a VPN, you try to be in control of how your info is protected. But many other places also have it, and they might not be as careful. That's why LifeLock monitors hundreds of millions of data points a second for threats. If your identity is stolen, they'll fix it, guaranteed, or your money back. Save up to 40% your first year. Visit lifelock.com/podcast for 40% off. Terms apply.
Welcome back, True Crime Army. I am your host, Margot, veteran, former active duty JAG, and this is Military Murder, the show where we shine a spotlight on crimes committed by military members and veterans. Because when violence happens in our community, you deserve to know. If this is your first time tuning in, welcome. You picked a wild episode to jump in on. And guess what? This isn't our usual one case deep dive. This is a headlines edition where I bring you 4 to 6 of the most pressing, shocking, or underreported military-related cases happening right now. And today's stories, they're some of the most disturbing that I've covered in a while. We've got a Navy sailor accused of a Memorial Day mass shooting, an execution-style cold case cracked after 22 years, and a soldier sentenced to 50 years for murdering a friend over a World Series games. There's also a heartbreaking update on a missing sailor found dead in the woods, a mystery from 1992 that may finally be solved, and, well, I have a little bit of a lighthearted case for you as well, and it involves a prison escape attempt. So buckle up, because these are the headlines shaking the military and veteran community this quarter. Now, let's dig in.
Military Murder is an independent project and is not endorsed by the Department of Defense or any military component. The views expressed are those of the host. The content of this podcast is not meant to be legal or medical advice. Warning, this episode contains graphic details of murder and is not suitable for young listeners. Listener discretion is advised.
Before we get into the really heavy cases, let me report on a somewhat comical event that went viral on social media recently. And it all took place at Fort Leavenworth, Kansas, where 2 inmates at the U.S. Disciplinary Barracks attempted a brazen escape in late April 2025. That attempt went down on April 29th, and it ended almost in a cartoonish-like failure, with one inmate literally caught in the act at the top of the prison fence. According to an Army spokesperson, the 2 prisoners made a run for it, but correctional officers from the Fort Leavenworth Army Corrections Brigade were quick to respond. The escape was halted swiftly, thankfully. Both would-be escapees were injured during the attempt, and they received medical treatment and were immediately returned to custody. Public safety was maintained throughout the incident. The attempted escape remains under investigation, and that was said by Lieutenant Colonel Brian Frago, spokesman for the Army's Combined Arms Center at Fort Leavenworth. Word of the failed jailbreak spread fast thanks to social media. A photo soon surfaced, posted by the popular military humor page U.S. Army WTF Moments, showing one of the inmates tangled in loops of razor-sharp concertina wire at the top of a chain-link fence. His prison uniform pants were snagged and halfway down. In the image, 2 uniformed officers are standing on the hood of a patrol vehicle trying to hoist the escapee down from the fence, a scene that feels straight out of a comedy sketch. You know, I'm probably going to say it's not real, although I imagine that this is exactly what it looks like. The Army hasn't confirmed, as I said, the authenticity of this image, but honestly, it's a pretty accurate visual representation of how badly this breakout went off the rails. Importantly, officials have not released the names of the inmates involved. And you know I went looking, right? My first thought when I was reading this article was, why are they even at Leavenworth? What did they do? But no surprise, I came up short. Quote, as a standard practice, we do not disclose information regarding inmates, end quote. And that was a statement said by Lieutenant Colonel Frago, citing policy and the ongoing investigation. There were even some rumors online that one of the escapees was a former Green Beret, which actually might be true, but the Army quickly shut that down, stating that the person named online was not the man in the photo. Because of privacy rules and the nature of the investigation, the military is keeping the inmates' identities under wraps for now. What we do know is this: both men were caught before leaving the prison perimeter, no one in the surrounding community was ever in real danger, and despite how dramatic it looked online, the incident was contained pretty quickly and professionally. Army CID is now investigating how these two inmates managed to get that far, and what security lapses, if any, allowed the attempt to happen in the first place. We'll keep our eye out on this one because something tells me that this story isn't over yet, although we'll see if anything is ever publicized. Our next story is one that really is devastating, and when I first heard about a missing sailor, I was, my heart just sank. This one centers on Seaman Angelina Petra Resendiz, a 21-year-old U.S. Navy culinary specialist from Brownsville, Texas. She was assigned to the USS James E. Williams, stationed at Naval Station Norfolk. It all began in late May. On May 29, 2025, Angelina was last seen in her barracks at around 10 p.m. The following morning, she didn't report for duty and she wasn't answering her calls or text messages, and her family immediately knew something wasn't right. Her mother later said that this behavior was completely out of character for their daughter. Still, days went by without anyone hearing from Angelina, and yet besides social media taking quick action and people asking if anyone had seen Angelina, authorities had allegedly not issued any type of missing persons alert. It wasn't until June 3rd, 5 days after Angelina was last seen, that Virginia State Police issued a critically missing adult alert after NCIS determined that there was serious concern for Angelina's safety. But by then, it may have already been too late. On June 9th, Angelina's body was found in a wooded area near Richard Bowling Elementary School, right off base in Norfolk. The following day, the medical examiner officially confirmed that the remains that were found were Angelina's. You see, what started as a missing persons report had now become a homicide investigation, and this is becoming far too often the norm for military missing females. Angelina's mother, Esmeralda Castle, has been outspoken and rightfully angry about how the case of her daughter was handled. In an interview with People, she said that she learned her daughter was missing not from the Navy, but from Angelina's friends and the media. Quote, colleagues, friends, and even authorities knew she was missing. They showed little compassion or understanding, end quote. And that was a statement that Angelina's mom made to WTKR News. Angelina's family has argued that the lack of urgency and communication may have actually contributed to Angelina's death. They're comparing Angelina's case to that of Vanessa Guillen, another Latina service member who was murdered in 2020, prompting widespread outrage and reforms like the I Am Vanessa Guillen Act. So what exactly happened in this case? The Naval Criminal Investigative Service confirmed that a fellow sailor assigned to the same ship is now in pretrial confinement in connection with Angelina's murder. According to People, that sailor is Seaman Jeremiah Copeland. He's currently being held on federal level charges and awaiting an Article 32 hearing, which is the military's version of a preliminary hearing. At a pretrial confinement hearing on June 16th, prosecutors argued that Copeland was a flight risk and a potential danger. The judge agreed, and he remains in pretrial confinement. Meanwhile, NCIS and local police say that they've been working tirelessly to pursue all leads since her disappearance. But to Angelina's family, it hasn't felt that way. They said that they feel kept in the dark and they're demanding accountability. Since Copeland was detained in connection with Angelina's murder, Esmeralda Castle, Angelina's mom, gave a powerful statement, a mother's voice breaking through the silence. Quote, Angie was a light in this world. Their actions were not a mistake. They were a betrayal of trust, of duty, and of basic human decency. Angie deserves justice. Our family deserves peace, and our community deserves protection, end quote. Angelina's funeral is scheduled, or by the time this comes out, it might have already occurred, but it was scheduled for June 27th in her hometown of Brownsville, Texas. A candlelight vigil will follow where her family and friends will remember her as a kind, compassionate young woman, someone who kept a 400-day Snapchat streak with her family and she did this just to stay close. Her story has drawn national attention, and civil rights advocates like LULAC are demanding more. They're calling for a transparent investigation comparing the case once again to Vanessa Guillen's and accusing the Navy of moving far too slowly. They're also pressing the Department of Defense, Congress, and Navy leadership to rethink how missing female service members, especially women of color, are handled. They're asking how many more families have to bury their daughters before real change occurs. So here's where things stand right now. Angelina's remains are back with her family. Seaman Jeremiah Copeland remains in custody awaiting his Article 32 hearing. NCIS's investigation is still ongoing. The cause of death has not yet been made public, and the Navy, along with DoD officials, is under growing pressure to be transparent and to make long overdue changes. We'll continue to follow this case as more information comes out and as her loved ones continue to fight for answers and justice.
Meet the most capable CR-V Honda has ever dreamed of. The all-new CR-V Trail Sport Hybrid. With all-terrain tires and available enhanced traction control, it's built for wherever the day takes you. Heated front seats and a heated steering wheel, ideal for winter drives and crisp early starts. And with generous cargo space, it's ready for big gear and even bigger getaways. The CR-V Trail Sport Hybrid. Learn more at honda.com/CRV.
Now at Chipotle, our all-new Chipotle Honey Chicken brings Chipotle heat with a touch of sweet. Seared smoked peppers and savory Mexican spices, blended with a hint of pure honey for a perfectly balanced sauce. All combined with fresh, tender chicken hot off the grill, served up in your favorite burrito or bowl. New Chipotle Honey Chicken takes heat and sweet to a whole new level. But it's only at Chipotle for a limited time. Order now in the app for pickup or delivery. Chipotle, for real.
Our next story shifts to Fort Irwin, California, where a tragic altercation between two Army soldiers who were friends ended in murder. And now one of them will spend the next 50 years behind bars. Army Specialist George Cornejo, 27, now it could be Jorge Cornejo, but I'm not sure. He has pled guilty at a court-martial to unpremeditated murder of Specialist Andrew P. Smith, also 27. And Smith and Cornejo were friends and fellow soldiers, and up until that night, they were brothers in arms. The incident occurred on October 28, 2024, inside Smith's on-base home. It started as a casual hangout between two soldiers watching Game 3 of the World Series, and it ended in a violent killing that stunned their entire unit. According to testimony and prosecutors, things escalated quickly. At some point during this World Series Game 3, an argument between the two soldiers broke out and it turned physical. Cornejo, sensing things were spiraling, actually called another soldier mid-fight. That soldier actually stayed on the line and could hear the sounds of a brawl breaking out in the background. Then, in a sudden and deadly decision, Cornejo went to the kitchen, grabbed a knife, and returned to stab Smith multiple times. And I know what you're thinking. Why would someone call another soldier during a fight if they're planning to kill? It's one of the many questions in this case that I had. Well, moments later, the soldier that Cornejo had phoned arrived at the house, only to walk into a horrific scene. Smith was still alive, but he was bleeding heavily and clinging to life. That soldier who walked in immediately called 911, which again, why did Cornejo not call 911 himself? Military police and paramedics rushed to the scene, and Smith was transported to the Army Community Hospital on base. Tragically, despite their efforts, he succumbed to his injuries and was pronounced dead shortly after. Cornejo was arrested on site, and during his interview with Army CID, he admitted to the stabbing. It was a shocking crime between friends. At the time, both Cornejo and Smith were junior enlisted soldiers in the 11th Armored Cavalry Regiment at Fort Irwin. Cornejo was a construction equipment repairer in the 58th Combat Engineer Company, and Smith worked as a utility equipment repairer in the same regiment. In the days that followed, the Army posthumously promoted Andrew Smith to sergeant, honoring his service and sacrifice. And the heartbreak didn't end there. Smith had just gotten married, and his wife was 7 months pregnant with their first child. That fact weighed heavily on everyone, especially the military judge who would later preside over Cornejo's case. Fast forward to May 28th, In a Fort Irwin courtroom, Cornejo pled guilty to unpremeditated murder as part of a plea agreement. Army Colonel Larry Babin, the military judge, accepted the plea, but didn't stop there. He sentenced Cornejo to 50 years in prison, a dishonorable discharge, and a reduction in rank to E1, which is the lowest enlisted rank. Notably, that sentence exceeded the usual guidelines. Now, the standard cap for unpremeditated murder is about 40 years, but Judge Babin went higher, citing several aggravating factors, and those included the vicious nature of the stabbing, the fact that it happened on a military installation, and that Cornejo knew that his victim was about to become a father. In short, the court found the circumstances so heinous that they warranted the extra time behind bars. During sentencing, Army prosecutors didn't mince words. My heart is still heavy for the loss suffered by Sergeant Andrew Smith's family. That was said by Major Joshua Mickelson, the lead prosecutor. No court-imposed sentence could ever fill the void this tragic crime has created, but we hope this outcome can help the family move on to the next chapter of their lives. Special Agent Olga Morales with Army CID's Southwest Field Office echoed this sentiment. This sentencing reflects the dedication of our CID agents at Fort Irwin. Our thoughts are with Sergeant Smith's family during this difficult time, and we hope this provides a measure of closure. Friends described Andrew Smith as a hardworking soldier from New York who was excited to become a dad. He enlisted in 2021 and had been stationed at Fort Irwin since 2022. His family held a memorial with full military honors in November of 2024, even as the justice system began turning its wheels. Now they carry on without him, raising his child and holding on to his memory. And Specialist George Cornejo will spend the better part of his life behind bars for a night that never should have turned deadly. Our next story takes us to Little River, South Carolina, just outside of Myrtle Beach, a picturesque spot along the intra-coastal waterway where locals and visitors gathered over Memorial Day weekend for sun, drinks, and celebration. But on the night of May 25th, a boat party turned violent, and by the end of it, 10 people had been shot. It started with over 120 people boarding a chartered party boat for a Memorial Day event. It was a festive night, music, drinks, dancing. But as the boat docked and passengers began to disembark onto a pier, well, an argument broke out. And that argument escalated quickly. Gunfire erupted in the parking lot of the boat charter business. Chaos followed. People screamed. They dove for cover, ran in every single direction. "We got shot coming off the boat. We were on the pier," recalled Jeremy Evans, one of the victims caught in the crossfire. Evans was shot in the leg, one of 10 people struck by bullets in what authorities are now calling a mass shooting. "When I got hit, I took my shorts off and wrapped it around my wounds," Evans said, recalling how he used his own clothing to slow the bleeding. Thankfully, no one died. But 10 people wounded at a crowded event, that qualifies officially as a mass casualty shooting. Cell phone footage captured the moments of panic, people scrambling across the pier, shots ringing out in the background. What began as a party ended in absolute terror. For a few days, the shooter was at large. But behind the scenes, local law enforcement was already working leads. And by early June, the break came. On June 5th, 2025, federal agents with NCIS made an arrest hundreds of miles away in Illinois. Their suspect, a 19-year-old by the name of Shawan Shamarian William, an active-duty U.S. Navy seaman. Williams was taken into custody at Naval Station Great Lakes, north of Chicago, where he was stationed. Now, the arrest was a coordinated effort between NCIS and local law enforcement. Once they'd identified Williams as a suspect in the South Carolina shooting, NCIS moved super quick to bring this guy in. The following day, June 6, Williams appeared in a Lake County, Illinois courtroom. He waived extradition, agreeing to return to South Carolina without a fight. According to officials in Horry County, Williams will face multiple counts of attempted murder along with charges for weapons possession during a violent crime. As of June 7th, authorities confirmed he had signed paperwork to expedite his transfer back to South Carolina. But here's what makes this even more unsettling. Police believe that Williams may not have acted alone. They've said that additional arrests could follow, suggesting other individuals may have aided or instigated the violence that night. So far, the exact motive remains unclear. Witnesses says that it started with a quarrel on the boat that spilled out over onto the dock. And according to Jeremy Evans, the shooter began firing while backing away from the crowd. He started shooting and running backwards, Evans told reporters, describing the gunman as he sprayed bullets into the crowd of partygoers trying to exit the boat. The case made national headlines, of course, and not just because of the shooting itself. The suspect is a service member, which, come on, that's the entire reason why I have a show called Military Murder, right? Well, listen, the Navy hull maintenance technician, who is only 19 years old and recently enlisted, it's just beyond me why he would commit such a heinous act. At the time of his arrest, allegedly, right? Everyone is innocent until proven guilty. Anyway, at the time of his arrest, Williams was assigned to the Navy Medicine Readiness and Training Command at Great Lakes. It's still unclear whether he had any direct connection to the Little River area, but one report suggests that Williams may be a North Carolina native, possibly returning home for a long weekend. Regardless of the motive or background, the arrest stunned many, and it reinforced the reality that even within our ranks, gun violence isn't off limits. And we all know that way too well, especially if you've been listening to the show. Since his arrest, victims like Jeremy Evans have publicly expressed relief that someone was finally caught. "We were involved in a mass shooting. 10 of us got sprayed in this deck," he said, sharing his recovery journey on social media and thanking police for their hard work. As of now, Williams has not yet been indicted in South Carolina, although by now he probably has by the time that this episode airs. The formal charges and any charges against accomplices will be determined in the coming weeks or months. But this story is far from over.
This podcast is brought to you by Carvana. Buying a car shouldn't eat up your week. That's why Carvana made it convenient. Car buying that fits around your life, not the other way around. You can get pre-qualified for an auto loan in just a couple of minutes and browse thousands of quality car options, all within your terms, all online, all on your schedule. Turn car buying into a few clicks and not a full week's endeavor. Finance and buy your car at your convenience on Carvana. Financing subject to credit approval. Additional terms and conditions may apply.
Paradise is back.
It's finally here.
In a new location, Costa Rica. There will be adventure, drama, and romance.
All gas, no brakes. That's my vibe.
Ready to find some love.
But it wouldn't be paradise without surprises along the way.
These kids need to learn.
That's right. Your favorite Golden alums are crashing the beach.
We bring in a party, baby.
Bachelor in Paradise. New Mondays at 8/7 Central on ABC and stream on Hulu.
In September of 2003, 47-year-old Navy veteran David Vanderzee was found dead in his home in the town of Randall, Wisconsin. He had been shot 5 times in the back of the head. Investigators called it what it was, an execution-style murder. And for 22 years, that case went cold. But in May of 2025, there was finally a break, and it led straight to 2 people closest to the man who was killed. It was his wife, Roxana Vanderzee Collins, and her alleged lover, John Viscolsil. Both are now charged with first-degree intentional homicide. You see, back in 2003, David and Roxana had only been married for 2 months, but investigators now say that Roxana was having an affair with this guy named Viscolsil, who wasn't just a casual acquaintance. He was one of David's very close friends. According to prosecutors, the lovers allegedly conspired to murder David, possibly for financial gain or simply to be together. And here's the kicker. Roxana and her lover are still together today. 2 decades after the murder, they're reportedly still in a relationship. On the night of the killing, Roxana was the one who called 911. She told dispatchers that she'd found her husband dead in their home. That immediately made her a person of interest, but without the murder weapon or a confession, the case stalled. Forensic testing did link bullet fragments in David's body to 2 guns owned by Viscolsil, but the firearms were never recovered. Both denied involvement, and for years, the case just sat unresolved. So you're probably wondering, like I always do, what changed in those 22 years? Well, what changed was that a former girlfriend of Viscolsil came forward, and she cast serious doubt on the alibi that he gave back in 2003. That tip was enough to reopen the case, and with it, investigators re-examined everything. Kenosha County DA Xavier Salas said it plainly. Quote, evidence doesn't expire. Violent offenders will be held accountable, end quote. On May 28, 2025, authorities arrested 65-year-old Roxana Collins at her home in McHenry, Illinois, and 64-year-old John Viscosel in Wisconsin. Wait, I thought they were together. I don't know. That's what the report said, that they were still together, but if one is living in Illinois and the other in Wisconsin, maybe they aren't together anymore. Both are being held on high bonds and they face life in prison if convicted. Sheriff David Zoner praised the cold case detectives and DA's office for never letting the file collect dust. McHenry County officials assisted with the Illinois arrest, marking this as a multi-state effort to bring long overdue justice. The picture that prosecutors are painting is clear. A newlywed husband ambushed in his own home, a wife feigning shock while secretly aligned with the killer, a lover possibly still by her side after all these years. This case is moving through the courts now. No guilty pleas have been entered yet, and no public statements from defense attorneys have been made. But after 22 years of silence, Roxana and Viscosel are finally being forced to face the charges that have followed them like shadows. For David Vanderzee's family, it's not just about closure, it's about finally hearing the truth spoken out loud in a courtroom. And that time is coming soon. This next case is a haunting case that dates all the way back to 1992. And now, more than 30 years later, a sudden arrest in Florida has breathed life into a cold case that the Army once thought might never be solved. On the night of November 28, 1992, during the Thanksgiving holiday, 32-year-old Tina Grogan and her two young sons, Dale Jr., 6, and Stephen, 4, vanished without a trace from their military housing at Leighton Barracks in Wurzburg, Germany. They were never seen again. Tina was married to Army Specialist Dale Grogan Sr., stationed overseas at the time of her disappearance, and according to neighbors, the night that she disappeared was anything but quiet. Multiple residents reported hearing a violent domestic dispute with children screaming things like, "Don't hurt my mommy." Now, wait a damn minute. This literally makes me so angry. I hate these cases because this entire family, this mom and two kids went missing in 1992. You have neighbors who heard this say, "Don't hurt my mommy," and these kids and their mom went missing. Anyway, let's get into it. Those chilling cries were the last time that anyone heard from Tina or the boys. The Army launched an extensive search with CID agents, German police, and even U.S. agencies looking for signs that Tina may have fled with the kids. But there were no sightings. No financial activity, no phone calls, nothing. They simply vanished from the face of the earth. What's worse is that Dale Grogan never reported his family missing. It was others who alerted authorities of never seeing the wife and kids ever again. Quote, he never even told the Army that she was gone, end quote. And that was a statement made by Tina's niece, Ariel Garcia. The red flags, though, didn't stop there. Less than 2 years after the disappearance, Dale was discharged from the military and he moved to Florida, starting a brand new life as if nothing had happened. Yes, I don't know why the guy was discharged or what service characterization he received, but that's just all that was reported at this moment. Well, by 2002, the case was cold. Tina's mother, Cheryl Williams, begged for answers before her death. She said, quote, "Before God closes my eyes, I hope we get closure for Tina and the boys," end quote. Sadly, she passed away without ever knowing what happened to her daughter and grandkids. But listen, in January of 2025, everything changed, almost. Dale Grogan, who is now 62 years old, or was in January, was arrested in Nassau County, Florida, in a sheriff's sting operation targeting alleged sexual predators. Grogan was charged with traveling to meet a minor for sex after he tried to rendezvous with someone he thought was a teenage girl. During his arrest, he reportedly made a disturbing comment, something to the effect of, quote, "I killed my wife when I was stationed in Germany," end quote. What? That is more than just a disturbing comment. That is a straight up confession. Well, listen, whether it was a confession, a threat, or just a careless remark, investigators took it seriously. At the same time, Army CID received new information from another source, possibly a tipster who saw Grogan's arrest in the news. By May of 2025, CID formally reopened the case of Tina, Dale Jr., and Stephen, and announced a $15,000 reward for credible information leading to an arrest and conviction. While Grogan has not been formally charged in connection with the disappearance of his wife and kids, he is now a person of interest in what CID believes is a triple homicide. Grogan remains jailed in Florida on the unrelated sex crime charge. The Army is now going back and they're re-interviewing witnesses from 1992, and they're circulating a new reward poster in English and German that explicitly references the children's cries that night. "Don't hurt my mommy." Investigators believe that someone out there knows something. Perhaps it's a friend that Grogan confided in over the years, or someone who helped cover it up. And they're especially interested in the Jacksonville, Florida area, where it is said that this man has lived for decades. Tina's family issued a statement saying, quote, "Not a day passes without their absence being felt. After all these years, we continue to pray for courage from those who can help us find the truth," end quote. They thanked the Army CID for never giving up, and despite the time, they still hold on to hope for answers, for justice, and for peace. This case is a chilling reminder that domestic violence can turn deadly. And listen, y'all, with renewed investigation, forensics advances, and perhaps a suspect who's finally willing to talk, the mystery of what happened to Tina, Dale Jr., and Stephen Grogan may finally be solved. And if it is because someone, somewhere, decided it was finally time to tell the truth. All right, True Crime Army, that wraps up this week's Headlines episode. But I can tell you right now that these headline episodes might become a new normal because there are so many current cases to keep up with. So if you're into these rapid fire recaps and want another headlines drop in 2 weeks, let me know in the comments section, or better yet, join the Patreon at patreon.com/militarymurder to support the show and to get bonus deep dive episodes. If you haven't already, make sure to follow the podcast wherever you're listening. And if you've got 15 seconds, rate and review the show right now. It helps more people find us and keeps this mission going. This episode was made possible by all of you, so thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for listening and sharing. The music on this episode was created by Ty-Ops. Until next time, remember, you never really know what someone is capable of, so remain vigilant always. You have a fabulous week, and I'll keep digging to bring you another military murder story next time.
Mama's working on her podcast.